Smoke still rose from the broken hulls of warships scattered across the red dirt of the planet's surface. Craters marked where orbital strikes had hit. Fires burned low, fed by whatever fuel remained in the wreckage. The war was over, or so, they said. Captain Elias Vance stood at the edge of a deep trench looking down at the massive form lying motionless below. It was hard to believe something that huge could be alive, or maybe even want to be. It was an alien, 9 feet tall, covered in dark, chitinous armor that looked like bone and steel fused together. Its body was badly damaged. One arm hung limp, torn at the joint. Wounds lined its chest and legs, oozing a blackish fluid that smelled sharp and strange. Around it lay the bodies of its own kind, twisted, lifeless, weapons still clutched in, clawed hands. This one, though, it was still breathing. Vance adjusted his helmet, checking the readouts. Scanners confirmed what he already suspected. The giant was barely alive. His team had swept the area. No traps, no hidden enemies, just this one survivor. Behind him, Sergeant Mallory spoke into her comm. "Command, this is Echo 7. We've got a live one. Repeat, enemy survivor. Big one." Static crackled before a voice responded. "Echo 7, confirm status. Is the target hostile?" Mallory glanced at Vance. He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the fallen warrior below. "Unknown," she replied. "Not moving, not responding, but alive." Another pause. Then orders came through. "Do not engage. Do not approach. Await further instructions." Mallory turned to Vance. "Sir, command says to wait. Let the medics or interrogators handle it." Vance didn't move. He had seen many things in this war. Friends die screaming, civilians begging for mercy, enemies who fought until their last breath. And now here was a monster, what propaganda had called a beast, a killer, a destroyer of worlds, and yet it lay broken and alone. Something inside him stirred. "I'm going down," he said quietly. Mallory's eyes widened. "Sir, are you serious? That thing could tear you apart with one hand even if it is half dead." Vance gave her a small smile. "Then I guess I better hope it doesn't wake up angry." He stepped off the edge, boots crunching as he landed beside the giant. Up close, it was even more terrifying. The alien's face was angular, with deep-set, eyes closed tight. A jagged scar ran across its forehead. Blood, or whatever passed for it, coated parts of its body. Vance knelt slowly, keeping his hands visible. He powered up his translation module, a basic device used for emergency diplomacy. It flickered weakly. Not much power left, still he tried. "Can you hear me?" he asked, voice calm. "I mean no harm." No response. He reached out slowly, placing a gloved hand gently on the alien's shoulder. A sudden movement. The giant's eyes snapped open, glowing yellow slits in a sea of darkness. It growled low and deep like thunder trapped in stone. Vance didn't flinch. He held his position, heart pounding but face steady. They stared at each other. Then the alien groaned in pain and collapsed again, too weak to move. Vance exhaled. Back above, Mallory cursed under her breath. "Sir, get back up here," commands, furious. Vance ignored her. Instead, he tapped his comm. "Medical team to my location, now." "No way, sir," Mallory argued. "Command will court-martial you." "Maybe," he admitted. "But I don't fight wars just to kill wounded soldiers." Minutes later, medics arrived. They worked fast, stabilizing the alien with human tech. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep him alive. As they prepared to move him, Vance walked beside the stretcher, watching every step. Someone had once told him that courage wasn't charging into battle with guns blazing. Real courage was doing the right thing when everyone else told you not to, and right now he was doing something no one else would. As the transport ship lifted off, carrying the wounded giant away from the battlefield, Vance looked out over the ruins. The war was over. But maybe, just maybe, something new could begin, even between enemies. Especially between enemies. The alien was placed in a reinforced containment chamber deep within the human base on New Vega. It wasn't a prison, not exactly, but it wasn't freedom either. Thick walls of steel and energy fields kept him inside. Cameras watched his every move. Armed guards stood outside the door. He was alive but barely conscious, and clearly in pain. His breathing was heavy, uneven. Every so often, he groaned in what sounded like agony. Captain Elias Vance stood behind the observation window, arms crossed, watching. Commander Hargrove entered the room behind him. Her voice was sharp. "You've caused quite a stir, Captain." Vance didn't turn. "I saved a life." "You risked your own," she replied. "And possibly ours." He finally looked at her. "He didn't attack me, he didn't even try." Hargrove sighed. "That thing is 9 feet tall, covered in armor, and from a species that nearly wiped out 3 of our colonies. You walked up to it like it was a lost puppy." "I saw something else," Vance said quietly. "Not a monster, not a soldier, just someone who was broken." She shook her head. "Well, Command doesn't see it that way. They want answers, and they don't trust you anymore." Vance nodded. That didn't surprise him. Behind the glass, the alien stirred. His glowing yellow eyes opened again. This time, he didn't growl. He didn't thrash. He simply stared at the humans watching him. Then, slowly, he sat up. His movements were stiff, pained, but deliberate. He looked around, taking in the sterile walls, the lights above, the armed guards. Then his gaze landed on Vance. They locked eyes. Vance stepped forward until he was close to the glass. He raised one hand, palm open, a universal sign, peace. The alien tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand. Then, with effort, he raised his massive clawed hand, still weak, and mirrored the gesture. It was small, simple, but it was something. Back. In the control room, murmurs spread among the techs and officers. Did he just respond? He understood. Hargrove narrowed her eyes. "This changes things." "It should," Vance said. Later that night, Vance sat alone in the debriefing room. A single light hung overhead. Across the table, Commander Hargrove and 2 other officers stared at him. "You're lucky you're still alive," one of them said. "You could have been killed," Hargrove added. "I know," Vance replied. "But I also think we missed something during this war. We painted them all as monsters. But what if some of them were just following orders? What if some wanted peace?" One officer scoffed. "You think an alien general would sit down for tea with us?" "No," Vance admitted, "but maybe one of their soldiers would." Silence followed. Finally, Hargrove leaned back. "Command wants to run tests on him. See what makes him tick. Maybe use his biology for weapons research." Vance's jaw tightened. "He's not a lab rat. They might not let you near him. Again," she warned. He looked toward the small window where the alien could be seen through the hall beyond, sitting silently in his cell. "I'm not afraid of orders," Vance said. "I'm afraid of wasting a chance." The next morning, Vance returned to the chamber. This time, he brought something with him, a chair. He placed it in front of the glass, sat down, and pulled out a notebook and pen. He started writing. At first, the alien watched him with suspicion. Then curiosity. Vance wrote for hours, notes, sketches, thoughts. Occasionally, he'd pause and look up, making eye contact. Sometimes the alien did the same. They never spoke, but communication doesn't always need words. After a while, Vance tapped on the glass and pointed to himself. "Elias," he said. The alien blinked. Then slowly, he pressed a claw against his own chest. "Korak," he rumbled. It was the first word they shared. Outside, a technician whispered into a headset. "Sir, they're talking." Inside the room, Vance smiled. Maybe, just maybe, understanding had begun. Vance and Korak didn't speak often, not in full sentences, but they communicated through gestures, drawings, sounds, and shared silence. Slowly, trust began to grow between them. The other humans watched from behind the glass, confused and uneasy. Some feared Vance was being manipulated. Others thought he had gone soft, but no one could deny that something unusual was happening. Then came the message from Command. Vance was summoned to a secure briefing room. Commander Hargrove was already there, along with 2 alien linguists and a scientist named Dr. Renner, who had studied captured enemy tech for years. "You've made progress," Hargrove said, flipping through a report. "More than we expected." Vance nodded. "He's not our enemy." Dr. Renner cleared his throat. "We believe he might be part of an elite warrior caste. His body structure is unique, stronger, more resilient than others we've examined." Hargrove looked at Vance carefully. "There's something else. We found records in the wreckage. They mention a bonding ritual used by his kind, a way to link warriors together through neural connection." Vance frowned. "What kind of bond?" Renner leaned forward. "A deep one. It links minds, shares memories, strengthens loyalty. Only done between trusted warriors." Vance's heart pounded. "You think he wants to do this and with me?" "We don't know," Hargrove admitted, "but you're the only human he's allowed near. If this bond exists, it might be the key to understanding him, and maybe even ending future wars." Vance sat still for a long moment. Then he stood up. "I'll do it." The chamber was different now. Instead of a prison, it had been turned into a neutral space. No guards, no weapons. Just 2 chairs facing each other, and a strange alien device placed on the table between them. Korak sat across from Vance, watching him closely. His wounds were healing. His eyes, once filled with pain and anger, now held something else: curiosity. Vance took a deep breath. He pointed to himself. "Elias." Then he tapped the device. "Ritual?" Korak's gaze dropped to the object. He slowly reached out, touching it with one clawed finger. A low hum filled the air. Lights flickered on. He looked back at Vance and gave a single nod. They both placed their hands on the device. At first, nothing happened. Then, a shock, not physical, mental. Vance gasped as images flooded his mind, not his own. Korak's. He saw a world burning under twin suns, cities in ruins, soldiers screaming as they fell. He felt pain, deep, personal, not just from battle, but from betrayal, from loss. He saw Korak standing tall in armor, surrounded by commanders who once called him brother. Then a trial, accusations, a sentence, abandonment, left to die, then darkness, and then waking up on the battlefield, seeing a small human in armor, who didn't run, who didn't shoot, who touched him like he mattered. The vision faded. Vance opened, his eyes shaking. Across from him, Korak stared at him in stunned silence. Then slowly he rose from his chair. He walked around the table and knelt. One massive knee hit the floor. His head lowered. 3 words rumbled from his chest. "You are worthy." Behind the observation window, the humans watching whispered in shock. Back inside the room, Vance reached out. He placed a hand on Korak's shoulder. "I'm glad," he said softly. For the first time since the war ended, peace felt possible, even if it started with just 2 soldiers, one human, one giant, standing together. The bond between Elias, Vance, and Korak changed everything. At first, it was subtle, small things, a shared feeling, a sudden understanding without words. Vance would think of a question and an image or emotion would rise in his mind, not from himself, but from Korak. And sometimes, when Korak was silent, Vance could feel something behind. His thoughts, pain, pride, even sorrow. They were connected, not just as allies, as brothers. Through the bond, Vance began to see Korak's world not through stories, but through memories. He saw towering cities built into cliffs glowing with energy. He saw great armies marching under banners of war. He saw children playing beneath twin moons, and warriors training for battle in massive stone arenas. but he also saw the truth behind the war. Korak had not been one of the monsters who attacked human colonies. He had fought against those who did. His people, the Vraken, had once lived in peace with many species across the stars. But a powerful faction, the Dominion Lords, had taken control. They believed strength came through conquest. They twisted their own kind, turning soldiers into beasts through genetic enhancement and cruel rituals. Korak had refused. He had led a rebellion within his own army. He had tried to stop the attacks on humans, but he had failed. Branded a traitor, he had been left to die on the battlefield. Now, through the bond, Vance understood what no report or prisoner could tell. The Vraken were not all enemies. Some still resisted, and now they had hope. Back at the base, the effects of the bonding ritual became clear. Command wanted answers, scientists wanted tests, politicians wanted control. Vance was ordered to report daily. Every change in his behavior, every new knowledge he gained from Korak was recorded. Some feared the bond made him weak. Others thought it gave him power that should be studied or used, but none of that mattered to Vance. What mattered was standing beside Korak as he healed. Every day the alien grew stronger. His wounds closed. His armor regrew where it had cracked, and his trust in Vance deepened. They trained together, not to fight each other, but to understand each other. Korak taught Vance how to move like a warrior, how to read body language, how to sense danger before it struck. In return, Vance taught Korak about Earth, about humanity's history, its wars, its dreams. And slowly, something bigger began to grow. Other humans started to come forward. Soldiers who had lost friends in the war, civilians who had feared aliens. They came to watch, to listen, to learn, and some, just a few at first, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, peace wasn't impossible. But not everyone welcomed this change. In the shadows of command, a group of officers began to talk. Not about peace, about threats. Vance is compromised, one said in a secret meeting. He's bonded with an enemy, another added. We don't know what influence that thing has over him. A third voice, colder, spoke last. If he becomes a risk to security, he must be removed. They didn't say it out loud, but they all knew what that meant. Vance and Korak were no longer just soldiers. They were symbols, and symbols can inspire, or they can be destroyed. One night, alone in the chamber, Vance sat across from Korak. He looked tired. You feel it too, don't you? He asked quietly. Korak tilted his head. Vance pointed to his own chest. Here. Like something is coming. The big alien nodded slowly. Then he reached out and placed a clawed hand on Vance's shoulder. We are together, he rumbled. Vance smiled. Yeah, we are. Outside the walls, the wind blew cold. Somewhere beyond the base, unseen eyes watched, and the storm was beginning. The storm broke quietly at first. A message slipped into Vance's private terminal. No name attached, just a warning. They're coming for you both. You have until dawn. Vance read it twice, then deleted it. He didn't panic. He had been expecting something like this. For weeks, rumors had spread through the base. Whispers that he was being watched, that his bond with Korak made him dangerous. Some said he was compromised. Others believed he was becoming something more, something unnatural. But the truth was simple. He was doing what no one else dared. He was building trust, and some people feared that more than war. That night, Vance woke Korak and gave him the message without words. Through their bond, he sent a single thought. We must leave. Korak understood immediately. With silent steps, they moved through the halls of the base. Vance wore only light armor. Korak carried no weapons, only his strength. They passed sleeping barracks, quiet command centers, empty corridors. By the time the alarm sounded, they were already gone. They fled into the wilds of New Vega, a planet still recovering from the war. Forests burned by orbital strikes stood blackened but alive. Rivers ran red with dust and blood. Ruins of old outposts dotted the land, forgotten by all but scavengers. It was here they found the first of many. A group of soldiers, human and alien alike, hiding in the ruins of an old supply depot. They had nowhere else to go. Some were deserters. Others were prisoners who escaped, and a few just wanted peace. One of them stepped forward, a human woman with a scar across her face. "You're Vance," she said, eyes wary. "The guy who bonded with a Vraken." Vance nodded. She looked at Korak, then back at him. "You know they'll hunt you for this?" "I know," Vance said, "but we're not the enemy anymore." Silence followed. Then the woman extended her hand. "Commander Mira Sol," she said. "I used to lead a squad on Thalos Prime. We were ordered to execute surrendered aliens. I refused." Vance shook her hand. "You did the right thing." Mira smiled bitterly. "Didn't feel like it at the time." Behind her, others stepped forward. A former pilot, a medic, a young soldier, barely older than a boy, and among them, 2 Vraken, one smaller than Korak, clearly not a warrior, and another with deep wounds across his chest. "They saved me," Mira said. "After my own side tried to kill us." Korak looked at the 2 Vraken and rumbled, low in his language. One of them responded with a bow. Then he spoke slowly, using the translation device. "You are different." Vance nodded. "So are you." Word spread fast. Across hidden channels, broken frequencies, and secret messages, the truth began to grow wings. There was a human who walked beside a giant. There was a Vraken who rejected, for there were soldiers willing to fight for peace, and they needed a home. More came. Some were humans who had seen too much death. Others were Vraken who had fled the Dominion lords. Even a few from other species joined. Beings caught in the crossfire of wars they never asked for. They built a camp beneath the roots of an ancient forest, where satellites couldn't see, them and drones couldn't reach. They called themselves the Iron Accord. Not an army, not yet, but something close. Back at the main base, the news hit hard. Vance was gone. So was Korak. Commander Hargrove sat alone in her office, staring at the report. Her hands trembled slightly as she read. "He's forming a group," one officer said. "Mixed species, dangerous ideas." Another added, "If this spreads, it could cause unrest. People might start asking questions." Hargrove finally looked up. "Like what? Why we're still treating all Vraken as enemies? Why we don't try peace?" She exhaled slowly. "We need to stop him," one of them said. "No," Hargrove replied, standing. "We need to understand him." But not everyone agreed. In another room, far from her ears, a different meeting took place. Dark, suits, cold voices. Orders were given. Find Vance. End the threat. Before it grows. Outside the walls of the world, under twin moons and silent stars, Vance and Korak stood watch over their growing family. They knew what was coming, but they also knew something else. They were not alone. And for the first time since the war ended, hope had a shape. It was tall. It was human. And it was ready to fight. Not from the sky, not with bombs or ships, but from shadows. A sniper shot rang out through the forest. A bullet struck a tree just inches from Vance's head. He dropped low, rolling behind cover as more shots followed. Korak roared and slammed his fist into the ground, sending shockwaves through the earth. Birds burst into flight. The forest shook like it was alive. Vance tapped his comm. "We've got hostiles, military grade." Mira's voice crackled back. "I see them. Recon teams. They're moving fast." "They found us," Korak growled. Beside him, Vance looked up at the towering alien warrior, his brother in spirit, if not blood. "Then we show them what we are." The Iron Accord had grown. What began as a handful of outcasts had become something more, a force built on trust, unity and survival. Humans, Vraken, even a few from other species now stood together, shoulder to shoulder. They weren't an army. Not yet. But they were ready to fight. From the trees, the enemy moved in silence. Black armor, no insignias, just cold efficiency. These were not regular soldiers. These were hunters, sent by those who feared what Vance and Korak had built. Behind a fallen log, Vance gave orders. Hold your fire until I say. We don't start a war, we finish one. Korak nodded. His glowing eyes scanned the forest, tracking every movement. Through their bond, he sent a single thought. They do not come for peace. Vance clenched his jaw. Then they won't leave with it. The first wave hit hard. Grenades exploded near the camp's edge. Smoke filled the air. Gunfire cracked like thunder. Mira ducked behind a wall of old crates, returning fire with controlled bursts. One of the Vraken, a young warrior named Threx, charged forward with a roar. His body crashed into two enemies, sending them flying. Go, Vance shouted. Take the high ground. Humans climbed the ruins. Vraken scaled the trees. They fought not with blind rage, but with purpose. This wasn't about winning. It was about proving that peace was worth defending. Midway through the battle, Vance spotted their leader, a tall figure in dark armor, moving with precision. Every step was calculated. Every shot landed. Vance locked eyes with him and knew who it was. Commander Dane, once a decorated officer, now part of the secret group hunting those who threatened the status quo. Dane raised his weapon. Vance dove behind cover as bullets tore through wood. Through the bond, Korak felt Vance's fear, not for himself but for what this meant. If we fall today, everything dies with us. Korak let out a deep guttural growl. Then he rose, alone, in full view. He stepped into the open, standing tall among the chaos. Enemy, soldiers turned, weapons raising. Dane hesitated. Korak didn't. With a single leap, he smashed into the nearest squad. Armor crumpled. Guns flew, men screamed, and then behind him others followed. Vance led the charge. Mira flanked from the right. Threx broke through the left. Soldiers and warriors fought side by side, not as humans and aliens, but as equals. The tide turned. Dane tried to regroup, tried to call for backup, but the signal was jammed. Someone had hacked the comms. From a hidden outpost nearby, a voice spoke over the battlefield. This is Commander Hargrove. Cease fire, all units. The enemy paused. Vance stopped, breathing hard. Dane looked around, confused. Hargrove? What are you doing? I'm stopping this, she said, before it becomes something worse. More voices joined in. Officers, scientists, even some politicians. Stand down, Hargrove ordered again. Now. Slowly, the attackers lowered their weapons. Dane glared at Vance. You think this changes anything? Vance stepped forward, face covered in sweat and dust. No, but it proves what we already knew. Dane spat on the ground. You'll never be safe. Not while people like me exist. Vance smiled slightly. That's okay, because people like us exist too. Later that night, under the stars, Vance sat beside Korak. Around them, the survivors gathered. Some tended wounds, others shared food. Laughter rose between languages once thought untranslatable. Peace had not been given, it had been earned, and for the first time, it had been defended. Not with hate, but with unity. Korak placed a massive hand on Vance's shoulder. You are strong, he rumbled. Vance looked up at him. So are you. And in the quiet forest, beneath twin moons and silent skies, the world changed quietly, powerfully forever. The war was over. But peace had not come easily. It had been fought for, not with weapons, but with courage, trust, and sacrifice. Vance stood on a high cliff overlooking a city unlike any before it, not fully human, not fully alien, a place where both could live together. It was called Haven. Built on neutral ground, far from old battlefields, Haven had grown from whispers into something real. Refugees came here, soldiers who no longer wanted to fight, families who had lost everything, scientists, farmers, builders, dreamers. And at its heart stood two figures, one tall and armored with glowing yellow eyes, one smaller, human, wearing a simple coat and a smile. Captain Elias Vance and Korak, the Vraken, had become more than warriors. They had become symbols of unity, of hope, of peace. Back in the early days after the forest battle, things had nearly fallen apart. Command had tried to erase what happened, to silence the truth. But the world had seen too much. Too many lives had changed. Too many minds had opened. People began asking questions. Why were all Vraken treated as enemies? Why couldn't humans and aliens find a way to live side by side? Even inside the military, voices rose in support. Some officers resigned, others defected, and slowly, change began to take root. Commander Hargrove became one of the first human leaders to officially recognize the Vraken as a sovereign people. She helped broker the first peace talks between surviving Vraken clans and human colonies. But it was Vance and Korak who gave those talks meaning, because they had lived it. Now, in the halls of Haven's council chamber, leaders from both species gathered. Korak sat beside Vance at the long table, his deep voice filling the room as he spoke. Our kind once believed strength came through conquest, he said. We were wrong. Strength comes through trust, through understanding. Vance nodded. And we were taught to fear what we didn't know. That fear built walls. We tore them down. A young human girl raised her hand nervously. What about the ones who still hate us? Vance looked at her gently. They'll always be there, but we don't let hate decide our future. We do. From the back of the room, Mirasol watched with pride. She had once been a soldier with blood on her hands. Now she trained peacekeepers, humans and Vraken alike, who protected Haven and helped others build new homes. Peace wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Outside the council chamber, children played in the streets below. Human kids chasing Vraken kids, laughter echoing off stone and steel. A small boy tugged at his mother's arm, pointing at Vance as he walked by. Is that him? The boy asked. The mother smiled. Yes, that's Captain Vance. The boy stared wide-eyed. He saved the giant? She knelt beside him. No. He saved us. Later that night, Vance and Korak stood on the edge of the city looking out over the land. The wind was cool. The stars bright. You think we did enough? Vance asked quietly. Korak rumbled low. More than anyone thought possible. Vance chuckled. Didn't think I'd ever hear you say that. I feel it, Korak said. In your mind, in your heart. Vance smiled. You're getting better at this bond thing. Korak tilted his head. You made me better. Silence followed. Not awkward, peaceful. Then Korak added, They will remember us. Vance looked up. Yeah? Yes. Korak turned to him. As the twin storm, Vance raised an eyebrow. Twin storm, what does that mean? Korak pointed to the sky. Two forces, different winds, same storm. Together, unstoppable. Vance laughed softly. I like that. On the highest hill in Haven, a statue now stood. One figure tall and strong with clawed hands and a proud stance. Beside him, a smaller one, human, but standing just as tall. Their backs were to each other, weapons lowered, guardians of peace. Beneath the statue, carved in stone, were three simple lines. From fire came fear, from courage, kinship. This peace was forged by two who chose to see more than enemies.